More raw bob?
So, no more raw bob. I hope you enjoyed the raw bob. Let's back up to, I have so many words to say, so let's back up to the beginning. I know that Sublife is hard, and I'm sorry for this, but it is part of what we're going to have to get used to. I was at an AP Stats thing Monday and Tuesday, which is really cool and helpful for y'all, but I am out one day next week for baby, and then baby stuff is more and more going to be pending in life. It is what it is. Oh, Lord. Somebody needs to catch you up on that. It is big.
You're pregnant?
Yeah, exactly. Keep it on line for me. I don't have another flat.
Oh, no.
Okay, so
Forget it.
we lack productivity since I wasn't here, which is fine. It makes me nervous, but we'll just have to be okay. So this is how far behind we are. Last week, you took a Chapter 3 test. I have all those graded. I want to hand those back. We went over some of them yesterday during our study session, and that I need to address as well, but I will in just a moment. For the most part, people did well on the free response. Again, what's holding us back in life and killing our scores overall is multiple choice. So I'm going to tell you what I told those who attended the study session yesterday. The good news is, if you're trying to literally make a 3, 4, or 5 on the exam, I mean, clearly if you want to make 5, you're going to have to do a little better than this. 3, 4, 5, all you have to do is get over a 50% on the multiple choice. So if you got over a 4 out of 8 on our last test, that'd be fine. In fact, let's just go ahead and look back. Okay, I know I went over it with some people yesterday, but everyone wasn't there, so I'll go over it again now. Jared, Kenzie, Cody, Jana, Samantha, Ashley, Sally, Jackson,
I'm angry.
Samantha, Louise,
Oh, thank you. It's on my name, but alright.
Olivia,
Gotcha.
Shalia, Alexander. Okay, so as long as you got over a 4, we're going to call that a good day. I know that's low standards, but we're going to call that a good day. I think I wrote the right answers on most of your papers, but let's go over them. 1 is D, 2 is C, 3 is C, 4 is D, 5 is B, 6 is C, 7 is D, 8 is E. Okay, I know you ought to have at least a question about number
4.
4. Is that the one that everyone's mad at? Yes. So 4, the correlation coefficient, you know it's between -1 and 1. The fact that they gave a number bigger than -1, that's not feasible for a correlation coefficient. So the college should hire a new statistician. And I know that the wording of that question is what is annoying people, but if you were at the study session yesterday, you learned correlation coefficient is kind of easy. Everyone gets it. So they ask kind of tricky questions involving that when they're multiple choice. Okay, is there one we need to go over besides number 4? Number 2. Okay, number 2 depends on you doing number 1 correct. Well, not really. Okay, number 1 gave you an equation. Did you on number 1? It does. If you got 95.5 on number 1, that is correct. So you had to get number 1 correct to get number 2 correct. So that does kind of suck. You were supposed to, her actual score was 98, her predicted was 95.5. So did you do 98 minus 95.5 and get 2.5? So the answer is C. Okay, are there any other questions besides that on the multiple choice? Okay, well, crazily enough, I'm going to let you keep this one since everyone has had this assessment, so you can keep that. Okay, number 2.
So I got number 1 right.
Yes. Did you not do 98 minus 95.5?
No, but I explained why I did, but it doesn't matter.
No, yeah. Okay. As for the free response, here is the free response. Let's talk about the points for that. Kenzie. Sally. Hunter.
Yes.
Olivia.
His name?
Alex. What about man?
He's getting started tomorrow. It just keeps filling up his plate. He's done the drain twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you heard the word amber is spelled not with an A? Wild.
Jared.
I'll bet
Have you heard the word amber is spelled
8
not
out of
with an
8.
A? Wild.
Okay, so let's look at your free response.
IMBRE.
What does an E mean?
So So E is exemplary. So let's go back over the EPI scale because I'm going to hit on it all year, but it doesn't hurt to mention it again. We're going to say that, for your question, we're making each of ours worth 4.2. Some points are worth more parts than others. Thankfully, on the first one part, look at part 1. On part 1, there are only 3 parts. So I read through the key, actually, for real, looked up the old question that this is related to, and it was part B that was worth 2 points. So in my mind, you get an E, P, or an I, because that's how they grade it. E is exemplary, P is partial, I is incomplete. To get the E on part A, you had to explain why a linear model is appropriate for the data. The easiest way to explain why a linear model is appropriate for the data is to reference what number?
Correlation coefficient.
And they didn't give you R, so how did you find R?
Square root of R squared.
You square rooted R squared. So you can either square root R squared and tell what R is, and then say it has a positive, negative, whatever association it's supposed to be. You have to get the correct word, or else you get counted off without only a P. You could get an E doing something else, though, and someone else in the room did it. How else could you get a good score? You don't have to reference the correlation coefficient on part A.
Look at the slope of graph.
Kenzie, I believe it was you.
What, they got it wrong? Yes.
So I got it right.
Oh.
Part A.
Oh,
What did you reference? You didn't do R. What did you
I
reference?
did R squared.
She did R squared, but if you're going to reference R squared, you have to put it as a percentage. So she explained the percentage was accounting for this much, so that the line was accounting for this much of the information, and which is great. So, and she explained it well, and that was good. So you get an E if you either reference R squared or R, and you reference it appropriately. But it drops to a P if you don't reference the context. So if you did not actually reference what the explanatory response variables were, you're only going to get a P, so you're only going to get half a point. And what really stinks in life is that if you end up getting like a 2.5 out of 4, we round down to a 2. So it does stink. Half point don't add up for you, and you would like to get the whole point.
Okay.
Okay, so on part B, it gets worse. On part B, you had to actually write an equation, and so everyone who had the correct equation written got a point. But you only got, you didn't get both the points available, because again, part B is the one that was worth 2 points. If you didn't actually explain what X and Y were standing in for in your equation. We have talked, and Louise, I believe, did this. Did you not put Y and X and just put the variables in instead? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't even have to put X and Y. You can just put in the response variable in the Y slot, put in the X variable in the explanatory slot. It doesn't matter. But anyway, if you don't actually reference what X and Y are standing for, you're losing all your points. Okay, so part B was pretty straightforward. Are there any questions on part A or B? If most people messed up, they messed up part C. So let's look at part C. An estimate for the actual percentage of weeds killed when 2.5 teaspoons of weed killer is used. So you had to do what?
Percentage. Based off of
I guess look at the graph.
Look at the
that
residuals.
1%, the predicted 1%, and see like it's like not at 0.
Okay, so if we look at the residual graph, 40 is above or below that 0.
Below.
Below, meaning that we were over-predicted or under-predicted.
Over.
Which and so they're not going to count off. So Shalita missed part B and put under-predicted. They're not going to count off again on part C for that issue. They're nice about that. So if you make one mistake, they only count off that one time. So they're going to roll with what you did. But if you put the exact math you did in part B, that was the predicted, and we want an estimate for the actual. So the residual, it looks like it's about 4 below.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's about the -4. So you should have taken your 40.5 and subtracted 4 and gotten 36.5. And literally, if you just put 36.5, they're going to give it to you. If you put 36.5 and then what it is, 36.5 teaspoons of weed killer or whatever. 35. So since the residual, can I sell your paper? Since the residual, whoops, unfreeze. Since the residual, right here, these points that I colored blue on her paper, I think I colored them blue on a couple, but I got tired. since it is below that 0, and in fact, if I drew a line at 0, it would show you even further. So the 0 line is what our line's actually doing. And our actual point for 40 is below that line. In fact, we have 2 of them. We have a couple of them. So we're going to say, just on estimating, because there were a couple of them or whatever, it's about 4 below that 0. So the number you got on part B, you need to subtract 4 from. So it was 40, and now it's, or it was 40.5, now it's 36.5. Oh. Okay, is everyone cool on that one? Again, they're just wanting to know, basically, can you interpret something from that residual plot? Okay, and then, so, I don't know if you have any questions about that one. If you do and you're wanting, like you think you've been scored incorrectly, my suggestion would be that this one was, number 1 was the 2002 question 4 free response question. So literally, if Shalia goes home tonight, she could Google 2002 free response question 4, look at the rubric, and see what she got scored wrong on. Yes, sir.
If you were to, I don't know, if you were to not keep like consistency through your answers, like you put something wrong in the first answer and then like corrected it somehow, but then go back and corrected the first answer, would they call it wrong for inconsistency?
It depends on the situation and the error you made.
Like if you were to say like you over-predicted or you under-predicted,
And then you didn't actually, yeah.
You said C, you
So-
over-predicted.
Yeah, so that they would count, so they're really going to count off. So they might have given you the P before on part B, and they're probably giving you the I now, because clearly you understood with your answer via C. So they're probably going to give you the E on part C and the I on part B. But like you're saying, it is going to negatively hurt you even more because you fixed it. You understood that it was supposed to go down, and yet you wrote under. So yes, they are going to frustrate you. And that's back to the, so what he's asking is back to the case of less words is better. I never thought I'd say that in my life, but sometimes you write yourself in a corner. Me and Samantha are a queen of words, so we're like, if I put enough words, maybe they'll understand what I'm saying. But there is a point where you put so many words and you put in one vocab term wrong, and it kills all your smartness. Okay, good question. Give yours. Flip to the back. Flip to the back. Okay, this is another free response question, and it's from 1998. It is also question 4 from 1998. Again, if you Google statistics, AP free response question number 4, 1998, the key, the rubric, the whole 9 yards will come up. You're killing me with your phones. If you don't put them away, I might start swinging. You took AP for a reason. Why are you being so lazy today? Okay, Shalia's on the back. Part A, you had to have the equation. So what was nice about this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that there were 5 parts, which is not what's nice. So B and C I put together, because after reading through the rubric, that's how I think they graded it. So you had to get B and C correct to get the full E. If you only got part B correct but missed part C, you got a P. Most people had the equation correct on part A. Again, people are not using that last sentence. They're not defining the variables. Why are you writing an equation and not defining the variables? I don't understand. Part B and C, most people had correct. If not, you need to see me, because we've got to work on that line. Part D, most people had the correlation coefficient correct. We had an argument the other day about since it's 0.75. Should you say that's moderate or strong? Their key accepted either. So I thought 0.75 is not quite 0.8, so I said moderate. But some people thought round up to 0.8 and said strong. Their key accepted either. So if it's a questionable number like that, they'll take either terminology. There is a key word in part D you have to have though. Positive. If you don't have the word positive, they don't know that you actually understood when you take the square root of the correlation coefficient, you have to think through whether the slope of the line is positive or negative. So if you don't have the word positive, you're not going to get all your credit. And as those who wrote the say section yesterday learned, just leaving off the word positive can make a world of a difference. Okay, and then part E, I think was pretty easy, and we talked about how to do it. But I do want to, Louise can still remember.
Sure.
I do want to talk about what Louise said. So you were the worst in that you were too related to me. You like to rush in life. You just want it to be over with and move on, which is great, but not always the best idea. So what Louise did or could do, right? I don't know if he did it today or he did it the last time we did one similar to this. This was really similar to the one y'all had the other day. All I did was change the numbers. No, I did change a couple numbers, not gonna lie. Like the R squared. Yeah. Yeah. Tiny numbers.
Sure.
I thought so.
I think we got the same number for R. Yeah, that's the number for R, not the R squared, so.
Or that I changed the concept. I don't know. I changed one number. I know I changed one number. I thought I changed two.
I'm pretty sure the equation was the same too. I'm not sure you changed the random number. I don't
Who
know.
am I right now then? Strange. I meant to change the numbers.
Sure.
Me and Cody had a whole discussion about me changing the numbers.
That's why I asked you at the test, like, hey, did you mean to get
No,
this?
I was to give you like the same. So that's what they suggested at my competency room was like set similar questions set up, just different numbers. That way you can still practice the process, but different numbers this time. Shalia just explained after she drew these lines, she understood that this would be a negative. If you can explain it and use words, that's great. But what Batman, he can be Batman today. What he did originally was genius. You could fake predict each of these points and say, oh, this is about, let's see, 280, 290? I don't know. And you could fake predict each of these points and write you an ordered pair for each of these points and literally type those in your calculator, create a line to match that scatter plot, see that that line has a negative slope, and use that as your argument. Does it take extra time? Yes. Do you have a lot of time? Yes. On average, you have 15 minutes per free response question, and you have 2.5 minutes per multiple choice question. So why don't guys readers and we just trying to rush through life? You could, if Shalia has everything done and she's stuck on this one last part, well, take that one last part seriously, make something happen. Okay. I didn't do it today, but I am doing it tomorrow. Even if you're my field day people, I'll figure out how to post it on Google Classroom. I'm that good. Actually, you know what? I'll just say it till Monday because I cannot deal with the field day people. There was a free response question this past year that was linear regression. So what stinks is that linear regression is a very small part of stats. It's my favorite part. Very small part. So there's only like, I think the average was 3 multiple choice questions of linear regression. That's bad.
Out of how many?
Out of the 50. Which is kind of sad. You're like, I worked that hard and there were only 3 of these. But the chance is maybe there's a free response the way there was this past year, and then you could rock it out.
Usually change it though.
What if we don't actually care if we pass the AP test or not?
You care because Miss Compton cares.
I want that.
Because I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, I don't really care, I just want you to pass.
Kenzie, you're gonna pass. Literally, if you, the only scores that will make me cry are 1s, because you get a 1 if you just write your name.
Oh, dude, that I'm getting that.
Well, if you all know you're getting a 5, you know.
This is my first time.
You get a 1 if you write your name.
You get a 1 if you write your name. You get a 2 if you just get, let's say, a quarter of the multiple choice right, and you did maybe a third of the free response. Like, the way I'm understanding it, and if I could find it in my binder pack, I will. The way I'm understanding it is basically if you make over a 50 in life, over a 50 gets you a 3, 4, 5.
Oh.
50.
So failing.
So not even
gets
a
you
D.
passing grade.
Like, which
That's
is
like,
terrible.
sign me up.
It's, but no, it's terrible that stat has.
You are signed up. It's because
And you know what? It's terrible. Like, we were talking through. I mean, y'all actually are. I'm not gonna say y'all are angels because y'all know we're not angels, but y'all are good at using your words on the free response. A lot of other teachers are having issues, and like some of you rock it at putting in the right terminology in your free response, and that should save your souls. Because as Shalia is mad at, you don't get partial for a multiple choice. So you blow it on a couple multiple choice questions, it's okay. Use your words on a free response. And while we're on free response, so Shalia, hand me your paper.
Can you adjust that?
Shalia has a blind moment. She didn't. But let's say Shalia has a blind moment and
clearly
she didn't. She really rocked it on that one. Let's say she has a blind moment and she messes up A. And this is kind of related to what Louise was asking anyway. She blows on A. Shit, it just sucks. The worst you could do is to stop writing and not put anything else for B, C, D, or E and to leave the rest blank. At least try something. Even if you just have to make up numbers for A, they'll take the time to read through your made up numbers for B, C, D, and E. They will. It's terrible that they have that much time and they're putting that much thought into it. How sweet of them, but they will take the time.
In physics last year, we were doing a response type question, and I had no idea what I was doing on this question.
Right?
But I just took some numbers that I saw in the problem and put them into a formula that I remembered, and then explained myself, and ended up getting like 3 of the 4 potential points for it.
And that's what's going to happen on the real free response, because they're smart, and so the free response is going to come from later chapters, but it still might have a part that relates to this. Like, it might have like some crazy crap with some testing stuff we're going to get to later, and then maybe 2 parts are like this, and you're like, I didn't know how to do that testing joke, but I know how to do this. And at least get that. My gosh, that's better than the nothing you could get. Yes, ma'am. It was at an AP that study session.
Tuesday?
Yeah, I already said it.
Tuesday,
I
not
was at
Wednesday.
an AP stat study.
Yesterday.
I went to an AP stat conference Monday and
I
Tuesday.
thought she said what we did.
Yeah,
Yeah, she was asking what we did.
Oh, they watched the Professor Larbaugh video.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were not at the study session yesterday, which I understand life happens and some of us have more choices to make than we can. If you weren't there yesterday, there's a packet I can give you, and then I'm in the process of working on it. So I was gonna say for sure, I already gave one. I was gonna say for sure this is due. It's all your face, it's all your face, it's all your face. Didn't see your face. Didn't see your face. Not you.
Oh, well, your funny story is I thought that she would like there'd be like, we'd go to the auditorium / library where they scheduled us, and then from there they'd be like, if you're going to the stat study session, go here.
I came and tried to find you in the library and didn't see you in there. Didn't.
I was in the auditorium.
Yeah, they told us to. So hard to find. Did they call? Hey, did they call Roland, Mom?
Were you
No,
going
we just
for
said her
hours?
name.
Yeah, we were giving them a grant.
And then you can just see where it is.
Last time, I had 3 people text me and just said sign your name for them, and I said 3 people's name for them.
And I was making my own equation of it. I would, it
Yeah, I was in the,
didn't hit it all. It has to make sense. You gotta,
they talked about.
you're supposed to take the equation and like factor
And
it.
they talked about.
Okay.
University of South Alabama.
Let's roll on. Moving along in our lives. If you were not at the study session, I'm gonna let it go. I'll be like, oh, let's talk about what I need to do. The ones who are done have already turned it in. The ones who aren't done are almost done and gonna get it turned in. I'm not gonna set a due date on it quite yet because I have a plan in the works. But be warned, there are quite a few multiple choice and quite a few free response, and we already actually went through all of them. And I would love to take the time to go over them with you one-on-one, like, hey, this is this and here's why. I don't think that's possible, so either what's gonna happen is I'm gonna be super nice, and I'm gonna make a YouTube video of me saying all the words I already said yesterday and posting it again.
That's gonna be long.
This
should have just
3.5
recorded it,
hours.
yeah. Or, what I'm hoping will happen instead, because I just cannot, I'm hoping instead I can make a Saturday session happen sometime in November. And if so, maybe we can make some sort of a deal that those who attended can miss the first hour or hour or 2 or whatever, and then only have to show up for the second part. Because the study pack's great. Sadly, the study pack was supposed to have 4 sections, and I only felt comfortable putting 2 of the sections on there. Because the other 2 sections we haven't quite completed yet. Yes, ma'am.
Are you gonna be here Saturday for the math thing?
I am excited for that
Is it math?
No, it is for AP Growth.
Sorry.
Yes,
Best listening.
How are we gonna you said like we were like really behind, how are we gonna catch up throughout the year?
So I thought we were behind, but after talking to the other people, they're exactly. Are we behind in my mind because I would like to be ahead because eventually I'm leaving you? Yes. But are we behind compared to the rest of the world in AP Stat? No, scarily enough. Some people still aren't done with chapter 3, and one person was still on chapter 2. So I'm feeling a little bit better about us.
Secondary question.
But I could feel better. I could. I really can. And there are some things that we need to go back over as we learned yesterday in our study session, and as you will see in the multiple choice. So do we really know it all? No, do you ever really know it all? But we know enough until chapter 4. Sadly, chapter 4, there's no test anytime soon. It's going to take us a while to get through this chapter. I'm so sorry that a lot of my stuff says chapter 5 on it. They updated the textbook. It used to be chapter 5. Now it's chapter 4. You just got to roll with it. So Shalia had a question the other day.
I didn't remember everything. I don't remember anything.
on it.
So many.
So Leah had a question the other day, and I need to show that to you. But first, you two had questions. Go ahead.
So are we're not gonna like go with the
We're about a week behind the pace I had in mind. My goal was to finish chapter 6 correctly. I still think it's feasible. We might not get to do all that's gonna happen is I have to cut out some of the fun stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to get like behind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fun stuff.
I
Not
think the review at the end of the year is probably more.
Oh, no. No, so what happens is like the last chapters, so at the worst, what will happen is when I am out, either y'all will review, or it'll be like one chapter left and I make a couple videos and you can ask me questions about things in videos. But seriously, the very end is hypothesis testing. Not that many. Could be worse. We're not going to skip it, because I'm like you, I gotta know that I know all the things, but it's not as important as like what we're about to do. Okay, so a few days ago, when we were talking about how my stuff is labeled, Shalia was asking about the homework for this. Do you have your homework things? I don't find mine. Okay, I was nice in chapters 1, 2, and 3. I'm still going to be nice in chapter 4. Do you not have a page that says 4, 5? Okay, she does. Okay, so I need to give you the homework for chapter 4 and 5. Does anyone else have it? Anything I put it on like orange paper?
Yes.
Okay, can you show me that? You have a chapter 4 page. She does not. I don't know if it was her or just like at the top of the chapter. You guys have a 4? Okay, the copy or just skip that page. I'll fix that tomorrow. Okay, so chapter 4 is great, but as you've learned from the Raw Bob videos, chapter 4 is heavy on vocab. I'm going to be nice, and I'm giving you some vocab help. I'm moving the due date for that giant thing I want you to find till Monday. I'm also on the podium. Did you pick up the useful handout on your way in? It has some of the things. I don't care if you copy them. I don't care. I don't need you to draw an arrow, and I'm not that person. But I don't care if you literally copy them. But I still don't care if Louise just puts an example. If he doesn't understand, like, bias, he doesn't want to write the vocab come out, he can just put an example. That's fine. And there will be a vocab test, and we're going to make it next Wednesday. It's got a box. Once you use one of the terms, you cross it out. I was explaining it to people at the study group yesterday. Some of the words we're about to go over are you're like, I don't know which word is better. So I was explaining to them, like, if you're describing a cat and you call it an animal, I mean, yeah, that describes a cat, but that describes a lot of other stuff too. But if you're describing a cat and you say meow, that's a little more specific to a cat. Like a cat says meow, that's more specific to a cat. Well, yeah. But you know, like we describe more aspects of a cat to better describe a cat rather than that general term of animal would be better. So the closest term you can get is what's going to work. I don't know if that makes any sense. It will.
The most specific you can get to it.
Yes, the most specific you can
It's
get.
like on the polygon test we had growing up where they were like, is this a square or a rectangle?
And you're like, which one's most specific to? Perfect. Okay, so the Raw videos are great. So we're starting something that's a little much. So let me see. Here we go. Okay, so let's just back up to the beginning. So what's been great so far about this class is that people just hand you these numbers and they want you to do stuff with them. And that's great. Too bad people don't always hand you numbers. And even more so, when people do hand you numbers, shouldn't you question these numbers? Like, where did they get them? Where are they coming from? Are these good values? Was this a legit study? So that's what chapter 4 is more focusing on. How did we get the numbers and why do we know these numbers are good? Yes, dear.
Are we going to be doing our own survey?
We are going to do some things like that,
Let's
yes.
just cut them out. So
I don't know if we're going to do surveys because they take a lot of time, but we do have at least 3 activities next week. One involving rolling down the river. We won't actually roll, but a fun activity nonetheless. Yes, sir.
On the PSAT, they had a study where the person with a tidy desk had to think of ping pong examples, like what else can you do in ping pong? And then a person with a dirty, like a messy room or environment, they had to think of ideas. And the person with the messy environment that thought more of like creative ideas to ping pong while the person was tidy.
Interesting.
So you're tidy. So are you like not?
Probably small-minded.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't even know that's interesting, but not really what we're going to talk about. So I don't know. Okay, so before we start a study, we have to decide who's going to be our sample. And picking that sample and how we select that sample, that's our first part. We would really like, what we're going to learn over time, is we would really love a random sample. Meaning I'm not just doing girls, I'm not just doing boys, I'm pulling people randomly, and we'll talk about how to word that. I think that's all the words I want to say. So we really want to talk about, for today, how to pick a sample. Because, sadly, there are lots of different ways to pick a sample. Okay, I was trying to be cool, and I gave you notes that actually fold. So, it's supposed to make a cute little book. If you fold it in half, the top page should say collecting data. Do you have to fold? No, I really don't care. Okay, so we need to talk about why we're taking a sample and what's going on. Let's start with what is a population and versus a sample. What's a population?
That doesn't make sense. Why is the first page?
Yeah, I don't like the way this
Should it be using technology and random?
No.
Because that was the last page.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's what I did at first.
Oh, man. I printed it wrong. I hate that. That's fine. So the first page I want to talk about is collecting data regardless. Okay. No, not burn. I can't copy. It was a long day yesterday. It was a long day.
Sure.
Okay, so collecting data, and I have a lot of these, so that means I printed a lot of them yesterday. That means we're going to be folded wrong for a while. My bad. Okay, so what's the difference between a population and a sample?
Population is a large group, and then the sample is just a few from that.
Okay, so we're talking whole group versus a selection from the group. And I do GP for group because that's just how math people abbreviate because we're too lazy to write things out. Let's do an example using the school. A whole population would be the student body. And a sample would be just seniors, or we could do just the AP Stats class.
That's what Robert said.
A sample. And we can pick specific samples. You realize there might be a certain study where we really only care about senior responses. Or a certain study, like about a Saturday study session, why would we include anyone but the AP Stats kids on it, or whoever's attending on it? So there are times when a specific sample are good. And then a census is when you're trying to actually take this whole group and collect information from it. And I know there's a more specific definition from your book, and I know there's a more specific definition probably on the thing I gave you, but literally I just need you to know the common sense version. A census is when we're trying to poll the whole population. Now, a census, unless you're the U.S. government, and even if you are the U.S. government, is a bad idea. It's not very effective. Why is it not very effective?
Because people don't answer sometimes.
Okay, so we're going to get into non-response bias. We are going to talk about people who don't respond.
People who are those.
Well, there are lots of issues with the people we survey, but why else do we not want to do a census?
It's not active.
I don't know.
It's the money and the amount of data. I agree with both of those things. So I agree with all the other stuff about the people themselves and how they're going to cause issues. But also, when there's a census, who's paying for the census?
We are.
I mean, I guess our taxpayer money is awful. And then the amount of the data. So it's okay when I've got 30 points to put on my scatter plot, but when we're talking like over millions of points from my scatter plot, that seems a bit ridiculous. Who wants to do that?
30 points is still too much for me.
Who wants to do that? So let's not do that. So basically, we understand why we would want a sample. We see why a sample would be good, but we have to be specific about how we select this sample. Okay, so for our next page, I want to go to the one that says vocab. Let's talk about the different kinds of samples.
Stratified random sample.
Simple random sample.
I was afraid of stratified.
Oh. Okay, so we've already talked about population of the entire group. Census is collect data from everybody in the population. Sample is just a subset of the population we want to study. Okay, a convenient sample.
Whoever is able to answer.
Okay, so you have convenient samples all the time. Where have you seen a convenient sample?
Like at the doctor's office.
At the doctor's office, or at the mall, or if we sat outside this room and just asked random people questions. So it is when we choose individuals, we choose individuals from the population. Who are easy to reach. Okay, so we actually were just talking about a convenient sample at the conference I attended on Monday and Tuesday. And there was this old free response question, and it had people at a library, and the librarian was wanting to know if she should change some things up, so she polled the first 10 people in every morning. Why is that a bad idea?
Because the first 10 people are
Probably going to be the same.
Well, and I should probably add, it was the first 10 people, and it was July. What does that imply about the first 10 people at the library in July?
They're the ones that
They're
want
nerds.
to be there.
And it's early in the morning, so I assumed it was what kind of person?
Nerd.
I assumed it was either a family, but at the same time, early in the morning, I assumed old person. Old person. So you polled the first 10 old people you saw. And so a convenient sample is not always the best because you're going to get exactly what you wanted, just the people from the convenience. So I'm going to call this the laziest. This is lazy.
That's what we might have to sample, man.
Now, you and I are going to get to design some of our own studies. Although he is funny, we will never do a convenient sample. That is not for us. We're going to find out which one is we think best or easiest, and we're going to roll with it every time. But what happens on multiple choice and free response questions is they set up a study or whatever, and you have to identify what sample they used and what went wrong. The way we're talking about this one with the library and how they did a convenient sample because they just the first 10 people in every day, and why that was a bad idea. It's mostly common sense stuff, but we still got to know the words. Okay, so voluntary response sample. What does that sound like?
It's like when you voluntarily respond
Yeah.
to
Okay, you see these all the time. Where have you seen a voluntary response sample?
magazines.
On the phone.
The phone people. If they call and you're very opinionated, so I'm going to put some examples. People who respond on the phone. Phone polls. The only people who respond on phone polls are people who really give a rip about whatever the issue is.
I got called on Mocha.
I'm sorry, are y'all really, am I like really old for being on Facebook? Facebook has polls all the time, and only the people who really care about the issue vote for the Facebook polls.
I mean, sometimes they have polls to prove me.
Or I'm surprised that,
You can do polls on Instagram now.
I've seen that. I'm surprised you can't do polls on Snapchat or something. It's coming.
I'm just waiting for those live.
It's coming.
Like, see them like them.
I'm not that old, thanks there.
Oh,
Um,
MySpace has polls.
Yeah, thanks. Or, you know, what stinks in phone polls, Facebook polls, you know, even mail stuff in. Mail, through the mail, there's a problem.
Mailman.
And also, what you said with magazines, but news source polls. Yes.
How do people get your number to like poll you or like ask you for money?
I'm assuming you gave it to something else at some other point in time and you didn't realize it, but you somehow gave them permission to give out your number. Either that, or they could have a random digit thing, which we'll get to in a second, and it just, this machine goes through and dials all the different, I mean, it's not like there's an infinite amount of numbers. There are a lot of number combinations, but it's not infinite, so they could just go through, dial all the numbers, and maybe hit yours.
So,
What would be an example of like if you selected an interest in colleges and you stuff for your interest?
Oh, do I remember why
It's kind of like a voluntary sample because you initiated it. So a voluntary response sample of people who choose themselves. By responding to an invite. I didn't leave enough room. Okay, so a voluntary response It's a sample of people who basically elect themselves because they responded. So when I see my Facebook poll, I keep scrolling because I'm already mad at polls in life, and we're going to get to more and more why Miss Compton just cannot with people in polls. Just cannot with their skewed polls. But so the people who do respond are the people that really care. So you are nominating yourself by choosing to respond, whereas I am not choosing myself because I nominate to not respond.
Are there any samples that are like legit?
Yeah. We're saving those for the end. We're going through all the bad ones. Okay, and then, bias is, I thought convenience was the worst, but bias is probably the worst. Convenience, though, is easy to notice. Bias, people don't mean to do. They genuinely don't, and it just happens. Back to we were talking about the poll predictions the other day. Certain news networks I don't think they genuinely mean to be lean left or right, but they are. So when they get results that match what they wanted, they're not surprised. But that's what their people who are watching are anyway. So they're kind of biased unintentionally anyway. Okay, so bias is a method that favors some outcomes over others.
Yes.
Over others. And it tends to underestimate, overestimate what we wanted to actually know. I'm going to call it the truth, but you and I know that's questionable. Underestimate, overestimate. The truth. Okay, and then eventually we're going to talk about different types of bias. Because there is bias in, maybe I want things a certain way, so I'm only going to poll all the women in here because I don't care what the men think. There is that kind of bias. But there's also a bias, unintentionally maybe, in the way we phrase a question. So back to this free response question with this library person. The way they phrased the question was if we start having kids' summer programs, then we'll have to cut funding for other things. How do you feel about this issue? And it was worded even worse than that. And you're like, I don't want no kid programs. You're going to cut my other stuff. The way we word things is also an issue because that might itself be biased.
It's like when you have a survey and just oh, if you wear glasses, are you nerdy for looking?
Yes.
You do it when you're wearing glasses and when you're not wearing glasses.
So normally to make things nice, you might want to have that's why when you fill out surveys, they might have a non-respond or I don't care, I don't know. I like the ones that are from 5 to whatever, so you can say I strongly agree, strongly disagree, and I just don't care in the middle. I tend to be the don't care middle person. I'm normally not strong one way or the other. But you know what I mean by that. And that's one way to fix it is to add something like that.
It's like you try to lead people to believe something.
Yeah, and so this lady with the library questions, she was clearly leading people to be no kids programs for me. Thanks, pass. Especially if she's only polling the old people, then they're going to take the internet from the old people. No, they did not want that.
Old people need that internet.
Okay, so Kinsey had the best question yet. Are there any legit things we could do? Absolutely. Well, I'm going to put you all at a 5 because you all listened to.
You have extra point though.
You can have your extra point, and Kinsey can have her extra point. Okay, so random sampling is when we use a chance process. To pick our sample. Okay, clearly, my friends, we found a winner. We would like to somehow leave it up to the number gods to pick who is going to be involved in our study. That would be the best way. And so if we're wanting to do a random sample, we're going to talk about the different ways you could do a random sample. We could, if we're trying to just do everyone in this room, everyone could write their name on a piece of paper, I put them in a hat, I pull out a name. That would be the easiest way to do a random sample with only this many people. Now, we understand if there are 300 names going into the hat, that seems a little bit ridiculous. That's why we have technology. We could assign every person a number. He is number 3, and then I use my calculator to tell it to pick random numbers. If it selects number 3, it means him. You can do that. You can do that. You can tell your calculator not to repeat. Your calculator knows how to do random numbers. Even cooler, well, not cooler. So that's the coolest, is that my calculator can make random number generator for me. We assign everybody a number, I ask my calculator, it tells me the random number, I know who wins the drawing. However, since Alex and Louise have different calculators, Alex and Louise are going to get different random numbers, which means they're going to get different people, and you can see why with a free response, they're never going to allow that because they don't know what random numbers you're going to pull. So if there is a random number thing on it, that's to that last page, which we'll get to tomorrow, with this simple random sample and random digits. There's something called a random digits table, where we can find the digits from the table, and that way everyone's reading the same table and everyone will get the same answer.
Man, these statisticians love their tables.
We love some tables, man. I got a whole new table to show you 2 chapters from now. Ooh, it is a table. It is better than the Z table. It is a table.
Dude, wait. Better than the Z table, dude?
I call it the, well, I don't call it. They call it the star table. I'm going to adopt it. Star table. That's how cool it is.
Wait, the star table?
The star table. It's on the page after the Z table. It looks a lot like the Z table, but it's T star and Z star. It is the star table.
It's the biggest page.
Because T star and Z star, it's got to do with the samples. If we do a T
No, like the
table
word
and Z
star
table.
itself. Where's the word star?
I don't know. I feel like that's a